Hi, thank you for joining me for this brief lecture on the product mix. What I'll explain over the course of the next 5 to 10 minutes or so is provide you the definition for what a product mix is. I'll explain what that concept entails. I'll go over a few of the components that are involved in the product mix, and I'm going to go ahead and draw out a product mix to show you ultimately what this would look like in real life. So first off, let's explain what a product mix is. A product mix is basically the total number of product lines that a particular business has. And so within those product lines represent actual products and similar types of products, if you will. So let me kind of draw out how this would look and how this would play out for a particular company. So I'm going to draw just one as horizontal as I can line. And we're going to go over some of the different product lines for, let's pick Apple. Usually most people are familiar with Apple, and I'm somewhat familiar with them as well. So what are some of the different product lines that Apple has in their arsenal, if you will? The first one is they obviously have the iPod. Okay? The iPod encompassing a number of obviously different items within that. There's a lot of differentiation simply within the product line. And so the iPod would be an example of a product line because it represents a group of products that are related in some way, shape, or form. In this case, they all play music. The next product line that Apple has is the iPhone. Once again, representing a number of different products that have similar type interests but different in some way, shape, or form. They also have the iPad. They have the MacBook line. And we'll just do one more in the iMac line. And they have a number of different other product lines, of course, but we'll just review the 5 that I have here. And so we'll start with ultimately the iPod, obviously. We know the iPod obviously plays music and does a number of different things now. It's changed over the years. So what are some of the different specific products that are within the iPod? Well, you have, at one point, you had what we call an iPod mini. You have the iPod Nano, iPod Touch, and the iPod Classic, and I might be missing one or two. But these would be an example of individual products. You see, the iPod represents the actual product line itself. Okay? So from a vertical standpoint, the iPod, this is a product line, and so it's a line of products, a group of products that are very similar to one another. In this case, like I said before, they all play music. But they're different in some way, shape, or form because each of these individual items is tailored towards a different market, if you will, because the consumers use them a little differently. And so within a product line, we try to differ the product to a different market so that ultimately we're extending what we call reach, which is how many people we can essentially target with our product or how many people can purchase or have an interest in our particular product. You know, going with the iPhone, for example, there's a lot of differentiation here, of course. I mean, you differ usually in the size of the actual hard drive space on the phone. So usually now they start with, you have a 16 gigabyte model, 32 gigabyte, and obviously the 64 gigabyte. But you can also differ in color as well. You have some that are white, some are black. And that allows for a number of different combinations, of course, right? You can have a white 16 gig, a white 32, a white 64, and so on and so forth. So, once again, by having one simple product line, right, addressing one need, right, we're talking about a phone that does a lot of different things, has a lot of different features. But within this individual product line itself, we are allowing our phone to serve different types of consumers. So maybe the person that needs a larger hard drive space like a 64 gigabyte, if they're using it for different things, maybe it's a photographer and they're storing photos and different things, they would have a tool that can accommodate that. And likewise, if you have a more casual user where you're not necessarily accommodating a whole lot of media, but you need something to make phone calls and do some other things, then the 16 gigabyte would be something up your alley. And so the reach, once again, is trying to ultimately make our product seem attractive to multiple people so that everyone has a version almost for them. The next one is the iPad line. And the iPad line, of course, differs very similarly to the iPhone, right? You have differences in color, and you have differences with regards to size. You also have differences with regards to Wi-Fi, as well as simply cellular plans. And so that ultimately, if I have a need to be accessible to the internet at any location outside of simply Wi-Fi, obviously I can go with a 3G or 4G model where I pay a monthly fee. But once again, I actually have that opportunity to do so. Maybe I need to access it for different things for work and things like that. But just recently, Apple obviously announced the iPad mini. And so now you have a smaller version to kind of compete with the Google Nexus and the Amazon Kindle Fire HD as well. And so we're once again trying to expand the reach with our particular products here. And this goes on and on. I mean, you can go through MacBooks, you can go through iMacs and different things, and go through all of the different models and how they differ in terms of size or hard drive space or speed and all those different things. But horizontally here, we're obviously talking about the reach of our particular product line. And we know that ultimately by offering products that are involved in different areas, right? Music, phones, productivity type tools. That the more products that we have in our product mix, the wider the reach that we have ultimately. But within those product lines, we also offer a number of different products that differ in some way because ultimately we're trying to make sure and accommodate some of the different needs of the individual markets there. And so you'll find that some companies have very wide and very spread out product mixes on which they do a large number of things. You'll find that some companies have a very narrow product mix. They do one or two things and they focus on doing that very, very well. Having too wide of a product mix obviously can be bad. You might think, well, you're diversified, it's great, you're doing a number of different things. Yeah, that's true. But you run the risk of diluting your brand ultimately and just cannibalizing your own sales. Campbell's Soup had this problem before. They actually looked at the products they had, and they had 50 to 60 different types of soup that they actually sold. And there were usually only like 10 of them that sold very well. The other ones, they sold a little bit. And what they found was they weren't effectively utilizing their resources because they were producing all these different types of soup. And really, consumers generally bought only specific types. And it was causing them ultimately to just dilute their own brand, and people would generally just pick a Campbell's Soup in the first place. And so what they did is they consolidated their brands. They took their product line from 50 to 60 potentially different items in there, and they reduced it. And so ultimately they only had, several 5 to 10 types of soups, if you will, within one product line. And so it can be bad to have too many. It could also be too bad. It could also be very, very detrimental to have too few. Right? You may not be tailoring your product or services enough to the market. You may not be taking advantage of or leveraging opportunities enough if you're only going after certain segments, and maybe the segment that you're going after isn't a profitable market. There isn't enough people that are interested in that good or service. So those are things that you can obviously get into with regards to product mixes. But when we refer to the product mix, we're simply referring to the number of product lines that are involved. And within those product lines are all the different actual goods and services that are sold in a related category.